Hello everyone, it's Akiziel here. I hope you're all having a wonderful day. Today, I'll be doing another episode in my Guem lore series, a part 2 on the Pirate Alliance. The episode will cover the 7 great crews within the Alliance and their captains. Before we begin, I'd also just like to thank everyone who watches these, especially those who comment and have been engaging with me. I really appreciate it that other people have taken interest in this writing project of mine. It means a lot to me. But, without further ado, let us begin. The Black Boot Pirates are one of the 7 great crews of the Pirate Alliance, and are a lesson not to judge a book by its cover. At first glance, they do not seem particularly impressive, because their numbers consist primarily of ordinary humans. They are not the most numerous or the most advanced crew. With such an unassuming appearance, one may wonder how their captain, Augur Blackboot, maintains his position as a pirate lord. Their strength lies in their ability to form connections with others and use those connections to advance their goals. They maintain good relations with other pirates, especially many of the smaller crews, with which they hold significant sway. They have numerous neutral and even Navy coalition contacts. Whether by charisma, coercion, or logic, they maintain one of the most widespread information networks in all of Guem. Now, you may wonder, how do the Black Boot Pirates have contacts in the Naval Coalition? They usually do not infiltrate the Coalition, though it has happened before. Instead, they investigate personnel who may be corrupt. After all, any organization of sufficient size will inevitably have some corrupt members. Should the Black Boot Pirates acquire conclusive evidence of a person's misdeeds, they will blackmail them into providing big information. Informants usually deliver information via dead drops, which, for those who don't know what a dead drop is it's a method of leaving packages or items such as messages. You place them at a predefined place ahead of the time, usually somewhere that only the person who's going to collect it would know to look. And that way, both parties can exchange things without either one of them seeing the other. Now, their leader, Captain Augur Blackboot, is a legend in more ways than one. He's said to be of Spoyan descent, having started his criminal career as a smuggler out of the den of crime known as Flint City. A crack shot with his brace of pistols, tales tell that he can clip individual petals off a flower at 40 paces without damaging the rest. He's renowned for defeating the century-old ghost pirate, Rannick Vest, in a duel and claiming the Phantom's treasure for his hoard. His story contains many more tales and feats. His legend is more of one than most realize because it is a mix of truths, half-truths, rumors, and utter fabrications. In reality, Augur Blackboot was born Bertoldo Caputo in Ausonia and became a captain in the Coalition Navy. He served in covert operations and was quite the rising star. He appeared to be on a fast track to achieving the rank of admiral. He brought out the best in those under his command and, through their combined efforts, had exposed many smuggling rings, corrupt officials, and enemy spies. One may wonder why he left such a promising future behind and betrayed his homeland and the Naval Coalition. The truth that he told nary a soul is that he was far too effective at his work and learned too much. It was inevitable that his work would lead him to discover the rot hiding beneath the surface of Ausonia, steadfast as he was in pursuing the Grand Admiral's vision of a better world. He realized that ideal was only supported on the surface by his homeland's supposed leaders, while the puppet masters worked behind the curtains to enrich themselves. He had a duty to expose such deep corruption and would not have accepted any bribes. The cabals who controlled Ausonia knew they could not bribe him, and thus decided to silence Captain Caputo. The great wealth amassed by those in the shadows could buy more than mere luxuries. Soon, several of Guem's greatest assassins were pursuing the captain. Overnight, he had gone from being one of the coalition's most promising to a man fleeing for his life. During his flight, the cabals framed him for corruption and desertion. Unable to defend himself before the tribunal, the very comrades he once served alongside now numbered among his pursuers. Everything he had worked towards for years evaporated in a few short days, leaving him with little more than his life and what meager possessions he had escaped with. Most normal men would have surrendered in the face of such adversity, but not the captain. He could neither return to his homeland nor the coalition with the bounty on his head. Caputo had been stripped of rank and home, never to see his comrades or family. Despite this, he refused to accept defeat. He resolved to use the tactics of his enemies to one day drag them kicking and screaming into the light for all to see. Shortly after, Captain Bertoldo Caputo was said to have died at sea. In some ways, he had died and was reborn. The man who rose from the crucible of adversity was Augur Blackboot. And next up is the Blood Pirates. The Blood Pirates are a diverse crew that has held a position as one of the 7 great crews since the founding of the Alliance. Over nearly a century, members have changed. Some have fallen in combat, retired from piracy, or left for other reasons. These losses are replaced by recruiting individuals recognized to possess desirable qualities and a strong tolerance for their methods. While the crew is still predominantly composed of humans, this openness in recruitment has led to the inclusion of unusual members such as mutants, a salamander Sorin, an Ifrit, and even a Kraken. The Blood Pirates hold a fearsome reputation and come to mind more so than any other group at the mention of pirates. Their targets often surrender their wealth without hesitation for fear of the consequences. Several formerly bustling seaside towns became naught but ash on the wind as punishment for their defiance. Any act of resistance was an invitation for the buccaneers to do their worst. Not only did they pillage their targets, they slaughtered all but a handful of the townspeople. The pirates forced survivors to watch as all they once held dear was put to the torch, only to be released so others could learn the price of resistance. Acts such as these have sown both a fear of the pirates and doubts about the coalition's capabilities in the hearts of enough people that the peoples of the Western Tropics refuse to join the coalition. While the Blood Pirates are known for their brutality and cruelty, they are not the bloodthirsty raiders they lead others to believe them to be. It would surprise many who only know them by their fearsome reputation that, outside of battle, they enjoy music, games, and drink just as much as any other. Similarly, despite their captain's reputation, disciplinary officers ensure reasonable levels of order aboard their vessels, and the quartermasters distribute payment and room fairly. Despite how sadistic and bellicose some of them are, they cultivate their reputation to destroy the fighting spirit of their enemies. As rousing as a good fight can be, making one's victim surrender without a struggle is much better for the health of all involved. Captain Blood's reputation precedes him in the form of many tales. Despite the decades that have passed, he's the same individual that founded the Alliance alongside the other members of the First Court. Blood has weathered the ravages of time and battle, neither aging nor falling despite the injuries sustained. Once reduced to little more than a skeleton, he somehow persisted. Such unnatural endurance led to the belief that even Mortis could not claim his blackened soul. Others believe that he is not a mere man but some sort of vengeful sea spirit. His reputation is likewise a cultivated image. His use of fear and violence is a measured action. The captain is well aware that, if executed improperly, terror tactics can instead unite his enemies against him with renewed spirit. Many have met their end because they pressed their victims too hard, and in doing so, drove them into a corner. It is a fatal mistake that Blood intends to avoid. His early life shaped the captain into the man he is now. He was born and raised on a small, isolated backwater island in the western tropics. Rarely did any vessels visit, save for the occasional merchant's guild ship. It would have been a beautiful place to live were it not for how dangerous it was, and not just because of the piranha-infested rivers. Many could not understand the concept of treating a fellow man with respect. The inhabitants often treated each other however they believed they could without consequences. Respect was something bought and maintained with violence or the threat of it. As a young man, Blood bought the respect of his peers with a display that he felt communicated just how little patience he had left for them. He hoisted a beaten, bound man over a piranha-infested river and made minor cuts on the victim's legs. The dripping lifeblood attracted the ravenous fish. Only when the vicious swarm had arrived was the would-be pickpocket lured to his demise. The man's screams went unheeded, as Blood had no compassion for the people who had beaten, mocked, robbed, and otherwise harassed him daily for his entire life up to that point. And next is the Killer Crew Pirates. The Killer Crew Pirates have been one of the 7 great crews since the time of the First Council. While members and captains have changed over the decades, the latter has always been a descendant of their founder, Captain Sarah Killicrew. They are unusual among pirates because they are highly organized and disciplined, and receive training much like a formal military. Sarah Killicrew had exacting standards for her crew during the privateer era, which became a tradition among her descendants. Recruits are trained by veterans and disciplined by officers. Unlike most of their peers, they develop their holdings rather than simply extracting tribute. The Killicrew pirates built most of the industry on the islands of the eastern tropics. Their workshops churn out a significant portion of the manufactured goods used by themselves and the Alliance. They recognized that resources must first reach those who need them before they are of any use. For this reason, they devote a significant portion of their forces to the inglorious but vital task of maintaining supply lines. They are highly inventive, if somewhat eccentric, and can compete with the Naval Coalition's Research and Development Division, much to the displeasure of Fleet Admiral Astra Hokulani. Their electrical batteries were shockingly successful and became a foundation for further innovations. Examples include battery packs for their lightning mages, electrical weapons, and electrically powered automata with runic cores. An example of another exotic weapon they developed is the air gun, which offered many benefits over powder-based firearms. While they possess exotic weaponry, the Killer Group pirates continue to use good old-fashioned gunpowder. Manufacturing powder weaponry is much cheaper, faster, and less complex than manufacturing exotic weapons that require finely drawn copper wires, glass tubes, and other high-end, and in some cases fragile, components. Additionally, they have yet to produce anything that exceeds the destructive power of their cannons and mortars, not that they particularly mind, given the love of explosives shared by many among their ranks and the number of fortresses turned to rubble by them. And speaking of the captain herself, coming up is a very special guest, Old Man, who narrated the section
Admiral Alice Killicrew currently leads the Killicrew Pirates and is regarded as one of the greatest minds within the Pirate Alliance. She is the creator of weapons such as explosives which detonate underwater at desired depths to combat hostile leviathans, and a variant of carcass shot, which explodes while airborne to immerse airships and flying creatures alike in a mix of incendiary material and toxic fumes. Her talent for design extends past tools of destruction. She has proven to be an effective planner, able to administer her domain with similar efficiency to which she formulates strategies and tactics to bring ruin to her enemies. One may wonder why the Pirate Alliance has not yet overtaken the Naval Coalition, when they have such a gifted mind on their side. Like her mother, her contributions to the Alliance made her a priority target for the Naval Coalition. Less somewhat paranoid by her mother's assassination, her state has only worsened due to the many attempts on her life and brushes with death. One such case saw a cannonball fly close enough to graze her side and claim her right. As if by some curse, a few years later, the cybernetic replacement was claimed by yet another cannonball. These events shook her, and now only a trusted few may see her in person, and she has taken a less personal, direct part in command. Some wonder if perhaps the series of events that worsened Alice's paranoia was mere happenstance or deliberate. Why wouldn't the Coalition prey upon the trauma from her mother's assassination? After all, whether the assassins sent after the Prince Lord are successful or not, her adversaries still benefit. With every attempt on her life, her paranoia seems increasingly justified, and her meticulous nature is increasingly turned against her, as she spends ever more time preoccupied with preserving herself than commanding her forces.
I hope you all enjoyed listening to Old Man's narration. I really appreciate that he did that for me, and a link to both of his YouTube channels will be in the description box below. But up next is the Nar'quezad Pirates. The Nar'quezad Pirates hail from the Shadow Islands archipelago, a former colony of Ausonia. They joined the Alliance after the Ausonians and the Naval Coalition were driven from their shores and have fought against the Coalition ever since. Despite the length of their membership, it was only in the last few decades that they became powerful enough to stand as one of the 7 great crews. They prefer to keep to themselves, and, as a result, little is known about them. They exclusively recruit from the Shadow Islands and tell little about themselves. What most people know about them is from observation and rumors. They bind the few outsiders who associate with them to secrecy. One thing outsiders know without a doubt is that they have many masterful alchemists. They produce a variety of potions, poisons, salves, and other mixtures from ingredients unique to their homeland. Rumor has it that they can create concoctions capable of regenerating lost limbs and even imbuing objects with temporary life. Most believe that the Nar'quezad pirates reserve their most potent elixirs for their use and that of their wealthiest clientele. Members who bore horrific injuries and were thought dead have returned from the infirmaries. They were living, not dead. The only explanation that made sense was a potent elixir capable of restoring even the most broken bodies so long as the head remains intact. After all, there is no return from death without selling one's soul to Mortis and becoming one of the vile undead, is there? Their magic perplexes both friend and foe alike with its peculiarities. Rather than traditional spells, they primarily use rituals and enchanted items. They imbue objects with power, yet these items mysteriously lack runes or other visible signs of arcane power. Something as unassuming as a twig can cause instant death if struck on the head with it when wielded by one of their mystics. They need not be close to their adversaries to strike them down. A strand of a person's hair or dearly held item is all they need to inflict suffering and death upon an individual from afar. As though their magic and secretiveness Were not mystifying enough, onlookers have spotted them bringing unusual beasts aboard their vessels. There is an unmistakable glow in the wizened eyes of these creatures. Under direct sunlight, they appear translucent, akin to phantoms. They freely wander the vessels that carry them, and each beast receives reverence from the crew. Observers speculated that each imbues their host vessel with a blessing, as the nar'quezad pirates experience excellent fortune at sea. In battle, they use several unorthodox weapons. Harmless-looking toads have been released from cages or launched via mangonels, only to explode in a caustic poison shower. Sometimes, the army of toads grew with each hop until they eventually detonated. The spiders in their throne jars prey on humans, possess flesh-melting venom, and grow when exposed to mana. Their cannonballs glow in various colors and explode on impact, releasing an arcane cloud that curses those caught within. Members of the nar'quezad bloodline have led them since their formation, and Captain Telendar is the current leader. Outsiders know little about the captain beyond his skills as an alchemist and mystic, and that he is among the few who maintain good relations with Captain Blood. They theorize that it is due to his magic that Blood achieved his unnatural longevity. Some believe that Telendar has achieved similar longevity, as his expertise in alchemy and mysticism belie his years. And next, we'll be diving into the Undyne Pirates. The Undyne Pirates are an all-merfolk crew hailing from the Eastern Tropical Sea. Sharks are the most common subspecies among the crew members despite openness towards other denizens of the deeps. Any merfolk within the Eastern Tropics may volunteer for the crew and, if they impress, may be inducted. In a pinch, they may offer members of the local guard a position in the Undyne Pirates. Few reject the offer of such a prestigious position. The Undyne Pirates are more so the personal raiding force of the Ocean Lord of the Eastern Tropics than a usual pirate crew. Long before the founding of the Pirate Alliance, they offered two choices to those who sailed the warm waters of that sunny sea: pay the toll or be sent to the depths. The majority of the Eastern Tropics is controlled by the Pirate Alliance, thus requiring that they share the spoils of their raids with other ocean lords in exchange for the use of their territory. Nearly a century of associating with surface dwellers in the Alliance has made them much more tolerant. It would be an overstatement to think of the relationship as friendly despite the marked improvement over the disdain most merfolk have for other races. Some hopeful individuals view this as a sign that the children of the sea and the children of the earth and sky will one day reconcile their troubled past. The titles of the Captain of the Undyne Pirates and the Ocean Lord of the Eastern Tropics have been synonymous and handed down from parent to child for centuries. The tradition dates back to the first known wielder of the legendary Tidebringer, Milis Undyne, who groomed his eldest son to succeed him. The culmination of the training was a duel to the death, where his progeny felled him. Despite the embrace of death, Milis was content because he knew that his bloodline would become mightier with every passing generation. He intended his death because the 7 legendary swords are inert until claimed by a champion. He had slain the hydromantic leviathan that guarded the sword. Likewise, anyone who hoped to claim it must kill the prior owner. Each captain was fated to fall by the blade of their successor in a duel, lest their dynasty lose access to an artifact of immense power. Their captain, Sapphira Undyne, has a fearsome reputation to live up to. Her father was renowned for his ferocity, and living up to the expectations put her in a difficult position. Were it not for the need to build a matching reputation, she would have been comfortable overseeing her domain beneath the waves, while the surface dwellers squabbled. Instead, she must travel far afield to raid vessels and sacrifice a significant portion of the loot lest surface seafarers forget why sailors feared the Undyne name. Sapphira's lacking enthusiasm does not make her any less dangerous in battle. The Tidebringer grants the hydromantic power she is used to slice through flesh, timber, and steel alike with high-pressure jets of water. When she wishes to make a lasting impression on the surface dwellers, she may conjure water tentacles to drag a vessel into the depths, and evoke the fear of the Kraken in onlookers. Without the legendary blade, she remains an accomplished swordswoman, though much less powerful. Sapphira is, beneath the facade of a ruthless raider, a much softer person than her father, but is not afraid to exercise her authority when needed. He inspired compliance rather than loyalty in the crew through fear. He punished perceived disrespect with flogging. Sapphira is far more reasonable by comparison, and pays more attention to the crew's well-being. She has earned their loyalty by building bonds of camaraderie with them, but those who abuse her trust quickly learn that she's unafraid to don her mask. And the next great crew that we'll be going into will be the Vulpin Pirates. The story of the Vulpin Pirates began with the discovery of the Mist Islands and the following events. 37 years ago, a coalition commodore discovered the islands amongst a wispy cloud sea south of Zia. He saw value in the archipelago as a forward base to launch skyships into Alliance territory and watch for pirates approaching Zia from the south. Furthermore, the unique flora could be an alchemist's treasure trove. These factors excited the officer, who saw it as an opportunity to advance his career. The Commodore found that the islands were inhabited, and thus protocol dictated that diplomacy was the foremost tool in his arsenal. The Grand Admiral had instituted several reforms to improve the coalition's moral integrity and prevent a repeat of the unwarranted occupations that occurred under his predecessors. The Coalition Exploration Force complied and established contact with the locals who, surprisingly, spoke an old dialect of the Zian language. The Mist Islanders, dubbed Beaskin for their animal ears and tails, were offered trade deals and even membership in the coalition. The Beastkin rejected the offers because they held little interest in the wider world and its trinkets. The Commodore loathed the idea of leaving empty-handed, and thus chose to occupy the islands under the claim that the Beaskin were violent savages who struck first. The locals were peaceful, not that it mattered to the Commodore. He sent 2 underlings to deface shrines and framed the attempt by several Miko, which, if you are not familiar with the term, are shrine maidens, to drive away the Vandals as an attack. The defacement of the shrines was absent from the story to give the impression that the 2 Marines were completely innocent. The officer used claims of the islanders' supposedly savage nature to justify the occupation. The corrupt Commodore used every means he conceived to keep his lies alive. The crew of his command ship, men more loyal to him than the coalition, were used to perform the dirty work. They held family members hostage to force the Beaskin to play along with the narrative when inspectors sent by coalition command arrived. They portrayed the islanders as inferior due to several traits the Beaskin shared with various animals. For 7 years, the deception continued, and the Mist Islanders suffered hard labor. Some sadistic members of the Commodore's crew smuggled them out to be sold to slave traders, or tortured them for entertainment. A resistance force fought to free their people, but could not expel the invaders until the Killicrew pirates and Nar'quezad pirates lent their aid. The 2 pirate crews and the members of the resistance were considered heroes. The pirates received the privilege of being the only outsiders allowed to visit the Mist Islands. The resistance members went on to form the Vulpin Pirates with their leader, Kiyomi, as their captain. With such a troubled past, it is unsurprising that the Vulpin Pirates are close-knit and distrustful of outsiders. They are like a large family whose members deeply trust and care for one another. Their shared past reinforces their bonds of camaraderie because they know they have few friends among the outsiders. They use aliases around foreigners to create an additional degree of separation. To be told the real name of a Miss Islander is a sign of great trust. The Vulpin pirates are unique among pirates in that they refuse to kill their enemies. One of the teachings of their deities is that life is precious and killing is taboo. They incapacitate foes via non-lethal means. The exceptions are animals killed for food and evil entities that the deities command them to purge. The Vulpin pirates are a tiny crew in possession of a single skyship, but maintain a position as one of the 7 great crews despite this. Their small size is intentional because the captain wished to spare as many of her people as possible from further suffering and corrupting influences. Their fight is not only against their mortal enemies, but for the soul of their people. The Mist Islanders provide the Alliance with medicinal plants as their primary contribution. Many of these are used in their cuisine and possess a pleasant flavor. The ability of Mist Island's cuisine to simultaneously nourish, heal, and raise morale has led to a high demand for their produce. Food and medicine are not their only contributions. They are known for their ability to perform deep strikes thanks to their captain. Kiyomi wields the legendary sword Ame no Murakumo no Tsurugi, translated as Heavenly Sword of Gathering Clouds in common. He slayed a massive 8-headed serpent believed to be Yamata no Orochi and found the blade within its corpse. Not only is it perceived as a sign of the kami's divine favor bestowed upon the kitsune, but it is so keen as to be capable of slicing open temporary rifts. The portals link to any location, provided that the user can visualize it or has precise coordinates. With the sword, the Vulpin pirates strike almost anywhere and any time without warning. The only saving grace for their enemies has been the small size of the strike force, which limits the intensity and duration of these deep strikes. Kiyomi, known to most by her alias Anna Vulpin, is well known for her carefree attitude and endless love of food. She places few restrictions on her crew and allows them to conduct themselves as they please, within reason. Crew members often fall asleep on floors or tables after frequent celebrations. Her fondness for food leads to her spending much of her treasury on patronizing various restaurants so she may experience all sorts of cuisine. Regardless of the flavors and textures, she will try most foods at least once. An outside observer may see her as lax and irresponsible, but her approach is simply to enjoy life where possible and not to worry about matters beyond her control. Despite what most see, Captain Kiyomi takes operations seriously. It may be easy for the casual observer to forget that she waged a largely successful guerrilla campaign against the coalition for 7 years. She may have been unable to expel them without assistance, but the resistance had evaded capture and liberated many of her people during that time. Since then, she had continued to improve by learning from experience and her close friend, Admiral Alice Killicrew. The results of her raids on coalition convoys speak for themselves. And now, we'll be looking at the last of the 7 great crews, the Silver Armada. The members of the Silver Armada are counted amongst the 7 great crews, yet are not pirates. They are the High Elves who departed Elysium under the command of Lord Admiral Alexander Bainion. The silver-coated hulls they derive their name from repel one of the elves' greatest enemies, the undead. All were part of the Elysian Royal Navy and dutifully protected their homeland's idyllic shores. Most of them had served for over a century and honed their skills to mastery. Few mortals could ever hope to match them. Their primary naval weapon rather than cannons, and the benefits are many. They need neither gunpowder nor cannonballs. Instead, any sailor can use the focus for as long as they have the mana to continue casting. Sufficient rest or a mana potion can replenish their mana, and the sheer variety of spells at their disposal makes the focus a far more versatile weapon than a cannon. Why would brave sailors and marines of Elysium side with the pirates of all groups rather than the naval coalition? The answer lies in a single decision by the current Queen of Elysium, Sylvana. Her Majesty had already unified the two halves of Elysian society, the Highborn and the Wild Elves, with her marriage to King Inetherill, and sought further social reform. She wished to end her homeland's long isolation and promoted the idea that all peoples were equal despite their differing traits. The High Elves had long considered themselves as the superiors of most races due to their agility, beauty, longevity, and aptitude for magic. They viewed the elven subspecies descended from them to be impure and thus inferior, but still superior to non-elves. The dragons are among the few species that the High Elves considered peers due to their similar longevity and magical prowess. The sense of superiority had been an entrenched cultural value for millennia, and Queen Sylvana anticipated that any meaningful change would be hard-fought. She expected heated protests that would die out when tempers calm, but did not foresee the scale of the backlash to her reforms. Alexander Baignon and his supporters laid down their arms and refused to return to duty until the Queen abandoned her plans. They even denounced her and claimed she had sullied the honor of all elves, living and past, by equating them to lesser species. Alexander's faction could have launched a coup but lacked the desire or need. Their political power was sufficient to maintain the status quo. Even if they lacked political leverage, they were not interested in spilling elven blood and knew an armed insurrection would have cost much of their popular support. Had political pressure proved insufficient, they planned to secede rather than resort to violence. The entire affair would have resolved peacefully if not for the actions of one elf. Lord Tionin Baignon, the uncle of the Lord Admiral and brother to King Inetherill, attempted a coup with the aid of other extremists, and the result was disastrous. The Queen declared the opposition traitors under the belief that Alexander was involved. The Lord Admiral had no part in the coup and denounced those involved, but politics is always a messy affair filled with mutual mistrust. Sylvana felt uncertain if Alexander spoke the truth, and had no knowledge or involvement in the plot. Because of the instability, the monarchs entered Elysium into the naval coalition to protect their people. Alexander and his supporters fled their homeland and allied with the pirates out of necessity. Despite the capabilities of their warships and sailors, they had their limits. They would not have been able to fend off the coalition indefinitely, especially not without resupply. They hold no particular love for the swashbucklers and would gladly return to Elysium if they could. Unfortunately, the only thing awaiting them should they return is punishment for a crime they did not commit. Lord Admiral Alexander Baignon continues to lead the Silver Armada as a fair but strict leader. His standards are exacting because despite their renegade status, they are high elves. Nothing less than excellence is acceptable from people of their pedigree. He rewards those who meet or exceed his expectations appropriately. Lord Admiral is known for his arcane abilities and command of naval strategy and tactics. His mastery of magic earned him the rank of Archmage in the Mages Guild. A mix of natural talent and hard work has made him the most powerful mortal mage on Guem. Adversaries avoid him and his forces for fear of a swift defeat, like the one handed to the undead captain Rourke Barton. Rourke was a greedy cur, but one with the sense to pick his battles carefully. His raiding fleet fled whenever a peer or superior adversary appeared on the horizon. The captain only committed to engagements where his fleet had the advantage. His elusiveness had made him a thorn in Elysium's side for years. Alexander baited the undead raiding fleet into pursuing a moderately defended trade fleet while his forces moved into position to sever Rourke's retreat routes. A light escort would have been an obvious trap, but a heavy escort would have dissuaded his target from pursuing the merchants. When the zombie captain saw the Lord Admiral's vessel, the encirclement had already closed around his fleet. Unable to retreat, the raiders fought with the desperation of cornered rats, until their ships were not but splintered timbers drifting into the abyss. And that was part 2 of my lore on the Pirate Alliance. I'll be doing a part 3 on other notable crews, such as the Black Bandits, and the Rummer Pirates. I hope you all enjoyed listening. And again, I really do appreciate it those of you who watch, and especially those who engage in the comments. And if you enjoyed, I'd appreciate if you like, comment, and subscribe. It really helps. But until next time, thanks again for watching, and have a wonderful day. Ta-ta!